So why are we doing this at this point in time? Do we just want to be leaders, or is there some particular reason that you're looking at a banning of HF?
Great question.
Well, just to back up even a little farther than working group one, when our board makes decisions on regulations, they want to have all the information on the impacts to the region, the impacts to the particular facilities that are affected, and in addition, in this case, it impacts to the community and the risk to the community, and it's always a balance, right? And typically in a rulemaking, if it was an assurity, if it was 100% sure that a rulemaking would shut down a facility, whether it's a large refinery or a small business, our board definitely has thought twice about that. I think we need to explore, the CEC presentation and the actual likelihood of shutdown if this was brought forward. I mean, obviously,
we're in Torrance, California. They're discussing
the economics in different ways. We need to do that analysis, but I can tell you from my past experience, if someone said we would absolutely shut down if you move forward, that is a very, very strong consideration for our board. They always try to balance the risks, the air pollution risks, the hazard risks with the economic impacts. So again, there's still work to be done to try to balance that. The goal is never to shut down facilities whenever we've gone into rulemaking. Hopefully there's people in the room that have been involved in other rulemakings, and that is
a total
never
lie.
been a goal.
These green freaks
We
have
are
been trying to shut down that
safer.
refinery.
So you see that the rule now includes a whole suite of what could be permanent or temporary enhanced mitigation measures. And we want to give the board the full set of options to move forward. Why here, why now? Well, there is some unique aspects to the HF operations in our area. They are in very dense populated areas, and I know there might be one or two other refineries in the country that might have similar situations, but this is on the top of the list of refineries using HF that have a dense population surrounding them. There's been concerns about the risk. The community brings those concerns to our board, to staff. Our job is to bring it to the board. The board tells us to get to work and see what we can do, and that's what we're interested in. So it's part of the process. We don't know where it's going to end up. Let's rotate a little bit. We'll go to Kevin.
Okay, so I have a question for both presentations, so I guess I'll just shoot them out there and you guys can answer after if that's fine. So my first question would be for the first presentation is, Jim, in your opinion, do the facilities meet and exceed API 751 standards?
I cannot personally comment specifically on where those, how those refineries may or may not conform to 751. As I mentioned, 751 is a voluntary standard, although it's used around the world, as I said, but API is not in the auditing or enforcement business, so I can't really answer that question.
Okay, thank you. And then the other one is, it certainly seems like there's a little conversation, the last conversation was going on. It seems like there's a real heavy emphasis towards closing the facilities or, against the MHF facilities. Shouldn't there be a possibility of requirements that wouldn't trigger the closing of these facilities somewhere between the banning of MHF to more in the adding things that would help the safe operation, mitigating features, and those features, in my opinion, would be adopted much quicker. I was a planning commissioner in the city of Los Angeles, and I don't know that this facility could get approved on the city level. We had apartment buildings that took longer to get approved. I would imagine half the people on this dais up here would be in a class action lawsuit blocking it. So I would think that you're going to have a long time getting that thing permitted, getting it through the process, and by the time the project starts, probably half the people in this room will be retired. So we could probably get a lot of the to the same effect, make it a much safer facility, which I'm in favor of. My members work in that facility. I don't want them going anywhere safe, doing anything unsafe, as well as people operate the facility. I don't think anybody up here wants that, including the people that operate the refineries. If we could make that happen quicker, cheaper, it would be money going into the community instead of money coming out of the community. I think that's where we really need to focus.
Okay, and that is, as you see, the rule does include those types of mitigation measures now. It is a possible outcome that those would be what our board decides to do at the same time. It's another possible outcome that our board will decide to phase out HF or modified HF over a certain time period. We have to analyze all those potential outcomes and provide our board with the information and the implications of those decisions. So that's what these meetings are about, to get all that information. Your suggestion of on maybe more time for CEQA is something that we can consider, and we're trying to work on that schedule. I will mention that a lot of the cost information we discussed today, at least, is kind of focused on a sulfuric acid conversion, and I would also say that the timing we laid out is probably considering a sulfuric acid conversion. But if there were other alternatives that were being considered, it might take a little bit longer, it might take a little bit more time. That's the type of feedback we're looking for today. So let's go to Al, and we'll move it back on this side.
Okay. First of all, congratulations to Michael for his rapid fire delivery. I think you answered one of my questions, was whether ExxonMobil was really in compliance with the API standards when they had their explosion. And are you prepared to answer that or not?
No, I don't have that information. I can't answer that.
Okay, fair enough. And another technical question I had was, how do the API standards mesh with the newly completed refinery safety standards that California went through a lengthy process of developing with many stakeholders participating?
Yeah, I'm not intimately familiar with what was done here in California, since I operate more at a national level, and maybe Bridget can comment, but more specifically. But oftentimes, I tried to touch on it in my remarks. For instance, the PSM OSHA process safety management regulations and EPA R&P, those are performance-based. They tell you what to do. The standards, provide extra information, the tools I mentioned. So, there are times when the API documents are referenced, but I don't have a specific side by side of the new California regulations versus what, for instance, is in 751. But what we do, I mentioned we have a 5-year life cycle, and to the extent there are new regulations, new technology, new things that we need to consider when it comes time to update our standards, those are the kinds of things we would take into account. We would look at what has changed in the last 5 years, but it would be premature to judge what those discussions might be since we haven't.
Hey Chanel, how are you?
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Actually, I guess one thing I was rather favorably impressed by was this little flow chart here of working on enhanced mitigation measures, ASAP, while working toward eventual, making the community a lot safer by getting the hydrofluoric acid out of refineries. I guess I want to make kind of a almost rhetorical statement here that I don't think anybody here is here to shut down the refineries.
That's a lie.
I think we all want to be able to live a safer life, and I'm
It's a lie.
sympathetic to all the refinery workers here who in previous meetings have expressed their pride, how they feel they have a safe facility, and in a sense, this is this presentation was the first I heard that for any likelihood of the facilities shutting down their operations rather than upgrading them. And so, in a sense, I still am dubious that, I guess I'm still thinking the California market is an attractive enough one that facilities would want to
Nope.
upgrade to change their refining
Nope.
procedure. And in view of that, I have to say I actually resent the fact that, you know, the refinery owners have scared all you workers into coming out here for fear of your jobs.
Wow. Shame. Shame on you.
I have not been here trying to take your jobs away.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, you're trying to take our cars away.
Have our community safe for everybody. And I'd like you to keep that in mind.
Bullshit.
We all want to live safer lives.
We already do.
That the California
I
refinery
resent
safety measures, if implemented, will make the refinery safer. In fact, the head of the California Safety Board, or the Chemical Safety Board, said that if they had been in place and implemented properly, the ExxonMobil refinery explosion would not have happened. So we can make things safer. I'm very much impressed by all the enhanced mitigation measures that you're talking about putting in here in place. I just hope they're enough.
I think so. Let's go to Bridget.
It'll never be enough for a Democrat. And he's a puppet for Elmer at Suchi. He worked on Elmer at Suchi. Microphone.
First, for the timeline, what are the considerations? Obviously, this would be a new unit, whatever it was that they chose. Did you think about the fact that they would need to write new procedures, have new training, and implementation of that, especially with the new health PSM regulations?
No, that's a good point. That's something we need to consider.
And then the other had to do actually with the economic and cost analysis. You listed the cost-benefit analysis of proposed California oil and gas refinery regulations by the Rank Corporation. WISPA, we actually commented on that and had a study done to review that survey, and we identified several issues with the methodology that they used. They actually had a lack of subject matter expertise. They had an improper and biased survey methodology. They actually changed a lot of their survey questions midway through the survey.
Ooh.
So a lot of the respondents didn't actually have answered the full survey. And they actually had failure to use readily available and appropriate safety metrics, and misinterpretation and discounting of industry cost data. So I can supply you with the full comment letter as public information.
Absolutely, that'd be
That's
very
all.
helpful.
Okay, thank you.
We'll go to Stephen Ron. You haven't had a chance yet.
Thank you. I'd like to speak to the use of HF. And in the construction industry, which there are many folks in the room in the construction industry, I can tell you refineries aren't the only industry around in the Southland that uses HF. And I can tell you many industries that do, but I'm not gonna, because I don't feel like opening up that can of worms. But in the most unlikely places that people would never guess, it gets used safely. It has safety procedures on every application where we've installed the systems, and they work just fine. To the CEQA process, the building trades is heavily involved in the entitlement process for construction projects and works day in and day out with CEQA. Although we're not CEQA lawyers, there's plenty of them out there that make a lot of money.
Yep.
Average construction project, a hotel or a school, 3 to 5 years on average to get through the CEQA process.
Unbelievable.
Millions of dollars in legal fees.
Yep.
All the outreach you have to do to the community, which is not a bad thing. But timelines for something like a refinery.
It's getting better,
you really
Hunter.
should do
It's
a
getting
report
better.
on it. You get a legal opinion, because 5 years is probably way short of what it really is.
Oh.
Also, changing out a system like this at a refinery, when a refinery has to go down, the cost to the community, the economy, the folks that work at the refinery, and the cost to the refinery's bottom line, because they have shareholders also. I think it's a lot more cost effective to look at safety measures to make it nice and safe. 40 years ago, I worked on a nuclear plant in Central California, and we drove by protesters every day, but that was 40 years ago, and that plant's still operating. It had tons of safety measures. It's operated safely for almost 40 years. It's going to take them another 10 years to shut it down. But it's been very successful in clean energy, and nuclear power is safe when it's used right and has safety procedures. Thank you.
Let's go over here to Catherine.
Thanks. I just had a quick logistical question. So as far as the interim safety features that you discussed, would the funding for those be a part of the proposed rulemaking process, or would there be some sort of proposal? And how would the funds be set aside, or?
There would just be a cost analysis. The expectation would be that the facilities would cover the cost.
That they would cover the cost of it. And then as far as the CEQA process, is there a timeline for when that would begin, or that begins at the conclusion of the proposed rule?
We need, there's a little bit more work to do to get the rule language to a point that the CEQA process would kick off. We might want to do another version before that happens. Just because we haven't started doing some of the analyses that we know we need to do, but it really kicks off with that NOP initial study release and scoping meeting. So we're working on that right now. That's one of the reasons that the rule ended up getting delayed into first quarter, because that does take some time. All right, let's go Eric.
One quick question for Ron. Would API include modified HF and RP 751 if they weren't convinced that it was a useful tool in mitigation?
No. The information, the requirements, and recommendations that are included in 751 are not, are all supported by data, test results, that kind of thing. We could not support a requirement that we could not technically defend.
Thank you. Now we'll get into finally. It's difficult to discuss the when we don't see the need. So we have not pursued a when because we fail to see the need for a rule to ban these HF. Our understanding of this rulemaking process, or the working group process, was that we would go through and determine if there was a need to do anything different than what is presently being done with the use of modified HF.
So let me just respond to that. This working group can't determine the if, because the proposal of the board the board's going to determine the if, unless we're directed otherwise by a subcommittee of the board or the majority of the board. But we understand the difficulty of getting into the when discussion if we haven't agreed on the if, but staff has to make some estimates. So I understand that difficulty. Staff is going to make estimates, and we get information or not from the working group, from the facilities, or from the public. So, we can talk individually, we can talk as a group, write letters, whatever it is. We are going to have to make those estimates at some time.
Yeah, you understand our position.
Absolutely.
So one clarification on the presentation is we have 6 water cans, not 3. So I think that was the way it was presented. We would use 3 at one time, but we have 6 available. So it seems like a lot of this is driven from the use of RMP impacts. So in the district's presentation, in our letter, it's referred to as our interpretation. The comment in there was straight out of the RMP guidance document on what worst case scenario means. So it's very conservative, all that. That's not Valero's terminology. That's straight out of the RMP guidance document. So again, we think that's being misused and creating a lot of angst in the community that doesn't need to be there. There's still a lot of reference to alternate technologies. I think you even noted that the timeline doesn't support alternate technology. So I think you have input from UOP, and we mentioned that in an earlier meeting, that for the ionic liquid to be commercially proven, it needs to run at least 5 or 6 years. So that's 2026 out there at minimum. And that's if we approve not support any type of alternate technology because they have not been proven. We also, some similar comments that it's extremely aggressive if you go to sulfuric acid, which really is the only technology that could be used for conversion now. And CEQA permitting, we just went through a cogeneration project, which we're in the process of starting up. That took 3 years, and that's a much simpler project. So we question, as others have, about the validity of the permitting and CEQA timing. Thank you. And
Make sure you put on the wind bucket.
And then, as far as the existing, the use in your presentation of the documents to be used for the existing economic and cost analysis reports, the first document used there, I would seriously say that should be fact-checked, as there are numerous items in there that have been discussed at this working group meeting that have not been substantiated. They're either misrepresented or even downright falsehoods. So all the documents that are used should be clearly fact-checked when being used. And there's been numerous comments on the Norton Engineering study of the prices being understated, including from input from DuPont, who provided input to the Norton study, admitted that was low.
Eric, if I just note on that. So these are just studies that are currently out there that we're aware of that have brought up cost issues. It didn't say necessarily that these are the ones we're
I understand. We're just cautioning how those are used.
Sure.
And they need to be fact-checked if you're actually going to use those.
Yeah.
Don't take them at face value.
Sure.
And I'm just going to say, again, on the alternate technologies, we've had another month that's passed that there hasn't been any response on the district's subject matter expert claim that a UK refinery had been converted to HF. So lack of response on that, it's still hanging out there. And I think it misleads the public that a conversion is taking place and the viability of these alternate technologies. And we talked about the lack of commercial experience on how these alternate technologies work. And then it has been noted already by others in this meeting that the California adopted PSM regulations focus on safety in the refinery, and we're held accountable to that. And again, they focus on safety, and there's no reference to that modified HF needs to be changed. And it does cover refinery processes. So I'm going to restate that Valero's safely operated our present HF alkylation unit for over 35 years with no off-site incidents, and that includes 9 years with modified HF. And this time period has included earthquakes in the region. But through the years, we've continued to improve the mitigation systems, the operator training, and the unit inspections to follow the advances in Part 751 and throughout the industry. So we do work continuous improvement. And we continue to be concerned about the misuse of the RMP data in citing cases that are not meant to be addressed in that way. And then we'll go back to the 2004 EIR that the district performed. And a direct quote out of that EIR is the use of this modified process meets the SCQMD's Environmental Justice Program enhancement objectives with respect to elimination of concentrated HF. Also part of that study compared sulfuric acid as an option to the rehab project. And a direct quote out of the document is the SCQMD finds that the identified project alternatives, in this case sulfuric acid alkylation, would not achieve the goals of the project with fewer or less severe environmental impacts. So we continue to ask what has changed since 2004 other than a potential political agenda.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yep. And that guy right there.
Get us out of our cars.
So just the final statement is, over the course of these working groups, we're becoming more convinced that the outcome is predisposed to a ban on HF or modified HF, and not really on a rulemaking process that takes actual facts and into account to address the goal.
Thank you. You heard my statement earlier that nothing has been predetermined. Staff doesn't have the power to predetermine anything.
Sure,
Right.
whatever.
Policy decision.
Okay.
Right. I got a bridge in Brooklyn. I can
Liaisons in charge.
It's, again, it's 8 o'clock. We have the good news, I think it's good news, we have till 8:30. So, again, working group members, we have 21 cards, we want to get to the audience. So, be as brief as possible. New information.
No.
We have lots of letters. We have
Don't talk anymore. It's our turn.
Already.
This is the people's agenda.
Doesn't necessarily help our analysis and rehash all information. So, Sally?
I just wanted to make a response. Jerry, you mentioned that 50 refineries using HF and an excellent safety record and no significant release, but that's not correct because we've had at least 2 significant releases, not in the very distant past, at HF refineries in the U.S. in 1987 in Marathon.
That's not recent.
City.
That's 30 years ago.
64,000 pounds of HF were released.
That's 30 years ago.
That is a much less densely populated area. The release shot straight up, which was fortuitous because that made it more diffuse when it came down.
Don't worry,
84 city blocks
folks. I'll
were
be there.
evacuated.
I'm speaking.
People taken out of harm's way. Evacuation isn't possible in our densely populated area at the rate it would be necessary to do an evacuation. So that release, if it had occurred here, even if it shot vertically up, it would have had far more serious consequences because of the densely populated area. In 2009 in Sitco, 44,000 pounds were released. Again, fortuitously, the air blew it towards the bay, away from the inhabited areas of the city. Again, that's in a much less populated area as well, but the wind was going the right direction. In Torrance, at least, there is no safe direction for the wind to blow, except during the night. 2015, towards the west is the safer direction. So at the Torrance Refinery alone, we've had 2 near misses. The accident in 1987, which precipitated the lawsuit against Mobil and the final consent decree. It was a very serious accident with fire that there was serious concern at the time that the HF unit, some pipes might burst because of the heat. And the refinery in their toxics release inventory, they reported over 1,000 pounds released. Valero in 1987, their TRI report also reported a fairly large release. And then there's the 2015 near miss. Those things mean that it can happen. The safety record has not been perfect. As far as using the EPA RMP reports to determine hazard, even with 90% mitigation, the 50,000 pounds of MHF in that one tank would still leave 5,000 pounds of airborne acid. So then 90% of the airborne acid knocked down, it's still hazardous. And all the way to the beach, that HF cloud could have been toxic enough to kill or seriously injure.
Could have been toxic
enough. So AQMD in 2004 had not yet done their own independent evaluation of MHF. They've had an opportunity to do that at this time. It relied on the Torrance consent decree and the information that was publicly available. And that information was not complete. And we know now what happened in 1997 when the unit failed to function. It was shut down, and the additive
She talks too much.
10%, a symbolic amount, even according to the industry's own data at the time. So.
Gasoline. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you. What is it?
Comments and brevity, Sarah?
Quickly.
Just a quick question. How did you determine your time frames and what considerations?
She worked for David Hadley. We met with her about 11:46 to stop the shutting down of the Christian colleges. Remember, 11:46 was going to shut down all the Christian schools because they were discriminating against LGBT.
But I also viewed it as some of the ones that we were looking at were ones that were.
She's good. She's pro-business. She's conservative.
By people that didn't know anything about the project, didn't know anything about, let's say, in this case, like Operation Use. We felt that there was a way that this process could actually streamlined a little bit in that sense because we're talking about experts that work in this field. And so, but yeah, some other areas, like I talked to, people in logistics that do this line of work, and they say, I don't want any, units or piece of equipment, those sorts of things like that to run so many people and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was just do some research.
But again, we're looking for input on all of this, all those things. Okay, we'll go to Adam, David, and we'll go to the audience.
wanted to respond to a couple of the other working group members' questions that they had. Kevin had asked if the facilities were compliant with API 751. We are. We participate in the audits as required every 3 years. We follow up as required to fix any deficiencies that are found.
You guys drove all the way to my city. Like, thank you so much.
That's why the changing regulations as more shoulds and shall statements come in, as Ron mentioned, with each new iteration of 751. And to that point, Al, you mentioned you liked the enhanced mitigations that the AQB had laid out for the MHF unit. I'm glad you like them because we have almost all of these on our unit already today. We have one of the most sophisticated, safest MHF units in the world with, as they can be listed, a laundry list of tools in our toolbox is one way to put it, that keep and help us mitigate the hazards and keep the risk to our workers and the community at the absolute minimum. So just touching a little bit more as well on what Ms. Hayati mentioned as well. She's citing anhydrous HF incidents, not the same as modified HF.
Oh.
We continue to provide the AQMD staff with a plethora of testing that was done by scientists in the industry who are qualified to be doing and looking at this type of material. And we continue to continue the conversation with staff to show that this material was tested, it was shown to be safe, it was shown to be effective, and it was shown to give the vapor reduction benefits as stated in the safety advisor report and as we currently operate the unit in conjunction and in concert with the city of Torrance. So this is, again, a technical discussion that I hope we continue working with the staff to go through because I feel, as you mentioned, the staff is giving a if to the board, and that if needs to be substantiated by technical backing.
Yes.
And so we want and hope that the district
Facts
continues to
and
look
proof
at the
and
mind
logic,
data and let us
not feelings.
answer any further questions they might have as we work through this process so that we provide an if to the board that actually has a substantive backing behind it.
Right, and that's our intent. I mean, we talked about our initial assessment that we did not see enough evidence and all that information. However, we're continuing those discussions. You know, if there's additional information, additional testing, additional things that we're missing, we'll take that into account. I think, you know, characterizing the information you gave us as proving that MHF is safe, I think you could claim it's safer. I think there's no one's getting to 100% safety on anything.
And so, that's why you look at risk versus hazard. It's a discussion and it's a risk mitigation.
It's a reality, folks.
You're right. MHF is one tool, as Ron mentioned, in the safety toolbox of the MHF alkylation unit. So,
okay. So,
yeah, just had a couple more things. I just wanted to make sure it was put out there is, you know, from a timeline perspective. And I think Eric touched on this, but just want to reiterate a timeline from an alternate alkylation technology perspective isn't feasible to look at when we don't know when those technologies are going to be proven as commercially viable and commercially proven. None other than MHF, which is the newest alkylation technology at the moment, or sulfuric acid is commercially available, commercially proven, and we cannot put a timeline from a sequence standpoint, a design standpoint, implementation standpoint on any potential alternate alkylation technology until those exist. So we are happy to continue working with the district looking at those, but as has been mentioned in previous working groups, there is not that out there right now.
So let me just address that. So one thing that's been discussed, and this is in general in our rules, the AQMD has passed technology enforcing rules in the past on many different types of products, on coatings, on other types of facilities. The state Supreme Court upheld our ability to do so. But we're cognizant of technology may not work out like we think it will, even though they could show promise. So typically in rules that you have a technology that may need some more
the same Supreme
out,
Court that
instead of
says
very
that ICE
longer
can't pick up
compliance
illegal.
days, we do what we call technology assessments and give a check back in at certain milestones to see how certain technologies have developed, advanced, cost. That gives some impetus to develop those technologies and for facilities to explore those technologies.
Are you going to say dear unelected governing board? Are you going to say that?
that report back to our board gives them a chance to delay compliance dates if things aren't where they hope they can be again at that time. So that is
who
something.
decides that? Is it a joint, it would be like a working group type discussion? That would
Yeah,
look at
those
compliance
tech
like that?
assessments are done in a public process.
I guess, are we saying that that is a potential avenue in which we're also looking to
It's a
provide
potential
those?
option in this role.
So yeah, I guess I just want to close it again saying
Who are you
that
looking at?
similar to Eric, Torrance Refinery has been operating MHF for 20 years,
Philip
HF
Fine.
for over 50 years, with no offsite incident. Still see the impetus for a technical basis for looking at a ban, but we are happy and want to continue working with the district to prove out the technology and look at enhanced mitigation features as a potential.
Okay, that's good, David.
Can we wrap this up?
With the current proven technology, the timeline that you laid out here as initial document forces these companies to only look at sulfur, acid, alkaline.
He's recording us.
And for the reasons that Mr. Trent pointed out, the California Energy Commission, that would put these two companies out of business. Point blank. So I also agree that there are forces out there in the community who do not believe that any refineries should be permitted to run at all.
That's right.
In the state of California.
Yeah, Al.
Yeah, those two right there.
Please, my members, please be respectful of people with different opinions.
Sorry, retired.
Al is somebody who has helped workers in the past, I know from personal experience. He's entitled to his own opinion, so please be respectful.
But not at my expense.
Now, so the steel workers believe in our report, our risk to rate is, we're talking about HF. We point out in our report, the modified HF is a pending development of inherently safer technology is an acceptable alternative. But that technology is not yet available. Ms. Nakamura, I think at the last meeting, asked me at some point what I thought should happen, and I thought we should implement these enhanced mitigation measures that you proposed, but we should hold off on the next step of actually saying, okay, now you've got to replace MHF until there is proven technology out there. Sulfuric acid, for the reasons Mr. Shrimp mentioned, is not the alternative, and it has its own problems. We did check with our affiliated unions in Great Britain, and we cannot verify any refinery in Great Britain ever switching from HF to sulfuric acid.
I don't mean to cut you off. Let me just address that.
Yeah.
It came up a couple of times. Just to let everyone know, we have not been able to verify the claims of that consultant either. We're not relying on that information for moving forward with the rulemaking. It won't be part of our analysis, but we have not been able to verify that either. So just for the record, that has not yet been verified.
So as far as we, the steelworkers know, no refinery in the world has ever converted from HF to sulfuric acid.
Okay, so 8:15, 22 speaker cards. We'll go a little bit over. If you could try to keep it to 1 minute. Again, new information. If you just want to express your support or lack of support for what you heard today or what HMB is trying to do, that's okay. You can be brief. If you have a question for a panelist, like keep it to 1 or 2, and I think the working group members will try to be brief as well. We do want to hear from everybody. Again, 22, 23 cards here. I'll set a timer for 1 minute and give a polite reminder if we go over that. So let's get started. Dr. Ng? Yeah.
for city council last year. He's extremely liberal, total Democrat.
Yeah, two comments. I have a piece of paper that I'd like you guys to look at. It goes to your original thing about finding that the MHF, that the information that's been provided is not complete enough. I just ask that you strike out the requirement of flash atomization, because there are many processes involving HF release, and that's only one of the many in this. So you can read that. The gentleman who said, look, we're going to assume the refinery is closed down when you take away one part of their unit. I'd like you to do an analysis like the HMD is doing, saying, assume the refinery does not shut down, and that you just shut down their alkylation unit and have prepare for a different alkylation unit, and that would be a fairer apples-to-apples comparison. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ng. Al Garcia.
They got so fed up with it.
And just for speed, Jesse Capps is next. Come to the stand behind the speaker.
First off, I want to apologize for my voice. Number one, I have worked at the Torrance Refinery for 29 years. 27 and a half of those years have been in the alkylation unit. I can guarantee you that when I started working there, I had minimal protection. Over the years where we have actually started working in the alky, we've gone from Class C suits, Class B suits, Class A. Before, all I had to do was wear regular coveralls and pretty much a rain jacket with a face shield and rubber gloves. So we have progressed a lot. And Al, I don't mean bad, but I would love for you to go ahead and walk with me one day and see exactly what I have to do to go ahead and do a simple job within the alky. I mean, everything is strenuous to do. I mean, you have to deal with everything from, exhaustion, from heat stress, to, the potential of something coming out. So there are a lot of mitigation steps that you really need to understand. And I thank you.
Holding up these signs just as a visual cue. Marsh, Tracy Capps, and then Gary Gelano.
I'm Tracy Capps, toll-free IE. I apologize for my outbursts. Sitting through these meetings is torturous. You are all in the Southern California Air Quality Management District is comprised of unelected bureaucrats who make policy decisions that affect our lives. I drove here today from Montana. I drove in a car. Too bad that you people seem to be going along with the agenda coming down from the United Nations to get us all out of our cars. So this is very insidious. Shame on you who are going along with this agenda. And in California, in the United States of America, we have a way of life, and it involves a car. So sorry if you don't like it. Thank you.
Gary. And then next would be Neil Weeks.
My name is Gary Galino. I am here as a private citizen. I am a mouth breather and a car driver. That makes me one of the little people. I do not support the banning of any substance that is used in our gasoline. We are not fools. We know exactly what you are doing. We do not buy into the idea of being forced to empty our pockets so government can fix the weather. Government can't even build the Obamacare website, but it's going to solve the crisis of the weather, a crisis that has been concocted by government. What this is really about is you're trying to get us out of our cars. No gasoline means no cars. Everyone needs to know that when the city of Los Angeles accepted the 2028 Olympics, what that means is Los Angeles has 11 years to get us out of our cars. The last point that I would like to make, is the hypocrisy of the people who have these ideas. I thought your side was about the poor, the downtrodden, the undocumented, and those who are disadvantaged. All of these things, all of these taxes, all of these price increases are only making their lives harder. Getting rid of gasoline will destroy our economy and turn us into Venezuela. So please stop it.
If these refineries are shut down, gasoline would have to be imported from the Gulf Coast and overseas, which would push gasoline prices even higher at the pump. Then they're going to go later this year from all the new taxes we're going to get. I don't even have my glasses, I'm sorry. If gasoline has to be imported, we're going to have to rely on other countries to supply our gas. If they ship it here, the price of gasoline will go even higher for the people who can less afford it, the working poor and the working families. The Torrance Refinery is a major supporter of marine diesel for our ports as well as our jet fuel for our airports, including the LAX.
Yes.
We would force the cost of those fuels higher because they'd have to be imported too. Thank you.
And then Robert Corona. All right, there's Robert still here.
Good evening, working group members and guests. My name is Robert Corona, and I'm a proud member of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 11. I'm a 26-year member. I was born in Torrance Memorial, raised in South Bay, and eventually was able to move my family back in the last 10 years. In fact, our home is less than about a half mile away from the refinery. My wife's a graduate of North Torrance. My 4 children were also born in Torrance Memorial, graduates of Bishop Montgomery and West Torrance, and yes, they still live at home. I personally worked as an electrician in the refineries that we speak of in my years of youth, and my son just joined the union, and hopefully he'll be able to perform our craft in these same refineries. I give you my background just so you see that I have a personal and vested interest in making sure that refineries are run safely and cleanly. I'm here to ask that you not ban HF. We know that California's unique gasoline and diesel specifications limit the potential sources of gasoline and diesel. If we ban HF and shut down our local oil refineries, we'll be forced to import gasoline and diesel and jet fuel. That means gasoline prices go up for everybody. That also means the loss of hundreds, if not thousands, of middle-class jobs. I'm glad that you're investigating and information gathering. The Torrance Refinery should have oversight and regulation. It's imperative to me that this refinery is safe and clean since I'm so close. But do not ban HF. Doing so will have a negative impact on our local economy, our energy stability, and the community around us. Thank you.
Bob Abel, followed by Edwin Donahoe. Bob Abel. Edwin Donahoe.
They all left, I guess.
Christopher DeGroot. No. Chef Schaper.
Arthur?
No, it should be crystal clear.
Going really faster. Rick Marshall.
He left.
Alex Carmona. No. Armida Grajeda. Peter Burgess. Armida.
Hi, good evening. I live in Delano Boulevard between Crenshaw and Van Ness all my life. My parents are 4 years old when they came to that street, as most people that have lived there. They raised their kids there. I've raised my kids there, we still live there. I can tell you that we have seen the refinery evolve. We all want clean air, but we do not want people to lose their jobs.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, and then Edward Hart.
Just making a point on the timing, when to phase this out. Keep in mind that we're talking about jobs and impacts, and you'll notice people will mention, that's what you're affecting, is jobs. That risk is there. So the longer we have to go with this risk still out there of a major exposure that could impact people, that's that much longer that we have that risk. So you have to balance that out. Thank you.
Edward Hart, and then followed by Logan Backby.
My name is Ed Hart. I'm with the Torrance Refinery Alkylation Unit. Are you aware, or has anyone from the refinery mentioned that the ESP project was completed significantly over budget? After completion, a senior ExxonMobil manager at corporate had learned how much was spent. And with our refinery standing at the time, he said if he had known prior, he would not have approved the ESP project. He dodged the bullet. So we have quite a few handful of workers in the area of the alkylation unit, and these people I have direct consideration for their safety. Our neighbors are a direct extension of this consideration, and they will always be an integrated consideration. My last question, I have learned there are 89 refineries in the United States. 50 have hydrogen fluoride, of which 4 of these are modified HF. The other 39 are sulfuric acid. So fundamentally, I have to ask, why are you moving forward phasing out a chemical that is the predominant technology in the U.S. and has never had an off-site impact to the refineries in California? Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Logan Backby, and followed by Jesse Marquez.
Good evening. My name is Logan, and I've come here to speak as a Torrance resident, lifelong resident of the South Bay. I only have one simple point I'd like to make. The activist groups claiming to represent the community do not represent me and countless other residents. The activist group publications like to tout their statements as representative of the community as a whole, which is simply untrue. The TRA has a singular objective, which is to instill fear into the community by spreading false information as fact. The truth is, as a resident of Torrance, I do not live in fear of the refinery.
Thank you.
In closing, I would like to state again, the TRA does not speak for this community member. Thank you.
Jesse, followed by Armando Flores.
Jesse Marquez, a lifetime Wilmington resident and also the founder of an activist organization called the Coalition for a Safe Environment. We are 15 years old, and we've investigated probably 95% of all major refinery incidents here in the South Bay area. And what happened when the 2 Senate committees were here at the Torrance City Hall and asked the plant manager, the fire department, AQMD, why did the ESP blew up? None of them could answer. But I walked up to them and I announced at the meeting why it blew up. And guess what? The Chemical Safety Board said I was right, the reason why it blew up. That's why we, the public, and many representative members of the public that we do represent are concerned about public safety because we have a fear that we cannot trust. We want to make sure there is prevention. We want to make sure there's maximum safety features. We want to make sure that there is a public emergency preparedness plan, an evacuation plan. Because you see, you are looking at a living survivor of a refinery explosion. Fletcher Refinery blew up in front of my house when I was a teenager. Burned every member of my family from 1st to 3rd degrees. Over 200 people were burned and injured during that incident. So there is cause to be concerned. I also would like for your committee to look at another document as part of your research. About 4 years ago, the State Lands Commission created a new requirement called MOTEMS, Marine Oil Terminal Engineering and Maintenance Standards. Because of the safety of these terminals, it requires 7.0 building standards. Will any of these units at any of these refineries withstand a 7.0 earthquake? The answer is no. Will Valero withstand a tsunami coming at 100 miles per hour right there at the port of LA? No. Will it survive an airplane crash hitting it? No. So these are concerns that we want to make sure that are looked into. And there was also something else called, there's a document called each MOT utilize up-to-date risk and hazards analysis developed per CCPS guidelines for hazard evaluation procedures. Thank you.
Yes. Hand that to us, the names of those documents, we will take a look. Armando Flores, followed by Mary Matson.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Armando Flores with the Valley Industry and Commerce Association. I'm here on behalf of businesses and refineries that would be tremendously impacted by this ban. Gas prices would increase and jobs would be lost. Just want to reiterate the concern about the CEQA permitting process, the timeline that would be expanded, and the economic costs and supply issues for consumers is a tremendous concern for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Armando. Mary Matson, followed by Arthur Schaper.
Thank you. I'm glad some of the people left so that I got my card called because I wasn't sure. So I've heard a lot of comments from the work group tonight talking about neighbors, the neighborhood, density, interesting, different interpretations of the vintage photo of the refinery. I heard you answer why here, why now, because of concerns from the community. Well, I am that neighbor, and I am the community, and I hear people speaking for me that aren't speaking for me. So I thank some of my previous presenters because I don't know if they live in our neighborhood or not. I'm literally in the shadow of the refinery and have been for many, many years. The Torrance Refinery has been a very good neighbor when it was Mobil, ExxonMobil, and now BPF. And we're trusting you to continue to be good neighbors for us, and we want to give you the chance to do that. But we have some people stepping in the way, and I ask for two things. We all want safety. I recently had my first grandchild. She's at my house a lot, and I have every reason to want her to be safe. But I trust the process, and that you're going to make a good decision for us who live in the neighborhood, who will be affected if there's an incident. And I ask for balance. I ask for balance in your decision-making, in the thoughts that you bring to the table, and honestly, I ask for balance in the reporting on this issue because I don't think it is balanced. And then the media picks it up, and they say the community near the refinery are concerned. I think many of my neighbors join me in wanting to give you a chance and to continue to support the refinery in our neighborhood. So thank you.
Schaper. My name's Arthur Schaper. I was born in this city. I was raised in this city. I will probably die in this city, but I won't die from MHF. Second of all, the only workforce group that matters are the people sitting in these chairs. And they have taken good care of this refinery for the 20-plus years that I've been in and around this city. And yes, indeed, there is a political agenda. Al here works with Al Muratsuchi, for starters. He was blocking me from trying to speak to him during the election. And the TRAA lady right here, they get first dibs with the congressman who is a climate alarmist. There is this dedicated little faction that wants to shut the refinery down. We heard it out of Joe Galliani's own mouth at the January meeting last year. This is a subversive political agenda being blown way out of proportion, and I'm so glad to see that almost everybody in this room is finally standing up and speaking out against this. I am fed up with these unelected boards wanting to tinker with rules. I don't know how many of you, besides the ones who suit up and show up, even know what goes on in that refinery. It is a good neighbor. I feel safe in this city. I am fed up with this small faction, green alarmists, wanting to dictate to everybody else what they can do or to threaten their jobs.
Excellent speech. Excellent.
Thank you. He's a political appointee, and so is she.
Coming to the mic, followed by Roger Potter.
I am speaking as a neighbor of the refinery. I have lived on 183rd Street, close to Prairie Avenue, for 55.5 years. I have not been unduly alarmed by having the refinery as my neighbor. I am a supporter of the refinery. I want it to be safe. and I believe the refinery is working hard to make it that way and keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I have one more card.
I just had a couple questions / comments. First off, with the assessment on on gas costs, I was wondering why we analyzed month 1 through 9, which is when you would see the peak, rather than 10 through 15, which is after everything is kind of set, after the market has settled out and you see where it's at. I'm not sure why that decision was made. It would be interesting to see if there's different cost assessments that are outcome if you look at the steady state versus the impulse. And second off, I'm wondering why the decision is PBF keeps the refinery or they shutter it and no one ever uses it again. Is there not a possibility that they would sell it for $150 million to a competitor who would then invest the $400 million to switch to sulfuric? Why is this not in the consideration?
Thanks for your comment. I don't know if Courtney want to respond to that. That time period when they were shut down in 2015, 2016, the initial spike versus a steady state.
So the cost, I put in my presentation about 26 cents, was for a 17-month period. If I put in the cost for only the 9 months I was discussing the flow of imports and change in pipeline exports, the cost would have been much higher. So you're right. When the market settles out to a steady state influx of imports, it'll still be a higher cost. I was just looking at how the flows changed with imports and pipeline exports decreased, and I didn't want to use a period of time when there was no problems with the refineries. That's why I only used the final 9 months of the year, because the ESP explosion happened on February 18th. So there are different information being provided, so I'd be happy to provide to the board the cost over the 9-month period and looking at the import and export flows over the entire 17-month period to complete the record of the analysis. You have to do that.
Okay, so William Baxter and then Uriel Reyes.
My name is Bill Baxter. I'm a 45-year resident of the South Bay and a 30-year resident of Torrance. I've raised a family in Torrance. I now have grandchildren that live in Torrance. I want to go on record and I'm also a representative of the Carpenters Union. And I want to go on record as supporting PBF in their effort to run that refinery safer than it's ever run before. In my duties as a representative of the Carpenters Union, I don't ever want to send one member to a location that's not safely run and where they're not going to return home in the evening the same way they entered that facility in the morning. I support PBF, and I hope the AQMD makes a manageable decision here. Thank you.
I want to say hello to everybody and thank you for letting me speak. I've been working at Torrance Refinery for about 6 years now, and I can't say that it has not been safe because it's one of the safest refineries I've ever been in. And all those years I've been in the outcome. And for anyone here to think of removing HF, causing the refinery to shut down, pretty much is like taking my home away from my home. Because that's what the refinery is pretty much. And I'm not saying it just because that's where I work. It's simply where that's my home, away from home, pretty much. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Frank Zambrano, and I'm a representative of the Southwest Regional Council. We have a lot of members that are working in the refineries, and I myself started working in the refineries in the 80s. As a matter of fact, when I started, we didn't have to wear the snowmags. We just had to have long sleeves and leather boots and went to work. You know, the glasses, the safety glasses were much different then than they are now. Hey, I just want to touch up on how the refinery work has evolved since then. I have worked in the alky. I've worked in that Torrance refinery when it was mobile. I have been in those Class A suits, and I've had HF acid pouring all over me as I'm trying to build some scaffold, as I'm pipe fitting, trying to replace a leak. I've been there. And I'll tell you what, through all the years that I've worked in these refineries, hey, you know what? The one and number one thing is about safety. And if we're going to take care of each other inside the refinery, because we want to go home. All the people that work in there, whether they're an operator, whether they're working for the refinery, or they're a contractor, their responsibility is sitting at home every single day that they walk out of that house. And just removing, HF acid and trying to stop what's going on is hindering everybody's ability to provide for their families and ruin the economy in our local community. Thank you very much.
I'll just open it back up to the working group. It's about 8:42. We do have to yield the room pretty soon. Any final comments from the working group briefly? Who wants to get home?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Okay. So I just want to say how much I appreciate everyone, a member of the public and the working group for the brevity and being on point.
Again, you're seeing the white-collar arrogance versus the blue-collar excellence here.
It's really encouraging to see everyone express their opinion, and we'll all be in touch with the next working group. Thank you very much.
Nice job. Excuse me. Perfect. Oh my God, how many more meetings? So this is like really common in the city of Torrance right now. You have this small group called the Torrance Refinery Action Alliance, and they make a lot of noise and they love to scare people and give this impression that the modified hydrofluoric acid is so volatile and dangerous and that there could be any kind of catastrophe at any minute. It's a real drag. Something I forgot to mention, but this happened earlier this year. There was a resolution before the Torrance City Council, and it was about banning or trying to phase out that modified hydrofluoric acid. And the city council chambers were filled, every seat and all the hallways were filled up, but most of the people who had showed up were just a bunch of hippies and green activists from all throughout Los Angeles County. Not people in the city. You had a lot of the refinery workers who were there as well, speaking out against this. This is a game that's been going on for at least 2 years, since early January. They want to shut the refinery down. We know about this. I've heard it out of the mouths of some of these crazy green activists. The problem is that these green people, they don't stop. The dragging noise was my backpack, folks. It's a little broken. I might have to get a new one. Oops. So, this is something that's becoming a little tiresome to me, is that the left just never rest, they never stop, they never sleep. And this is the kind of thing that's been going on for a long time. And unfortunately, they've just been loud enough, and they've continued to be loud enough that they're trying to jolt people. You'll see signs scattered throughout the city, not in large numbers, but they all say, ban MHF. But banning MHF would essentially force the refinery to shut down. And so the greenies can say, we don't want to shut the refinery down. We just want to ban this dangerous chemical and have the refinery face into a substitute. But what would essentially happen? What would essentially happen is it would shut the refinery down. So that's what's going on. You can see this was a serious enough issue that Gary and Tressie drove all the way here to speak out against this whole agenda. It's about getting people out of their cars. I heard one guy talking about this outside of the meeting hall. To me, the biggest question is, what is it going to take to dry up these left-wing groups that make all this noise and agitate people. That's what it really has to take. It's not just enough to be going to these meetings and raising our voices and calling out the political operatives. I mean, the Sierra Club, that guy, Al Sattler, he worked on Al Martsucci's campaign. The same Al Martsucci, by the way, who raised our taxes twice with the gas tax and captain tax, and now the third time with this hidden tax. That's what's going on right now. You notice that the state rep or the representative for Al Martsucci didn't even want to talk to anybody. There are people who have lived in this community longer than I've been alive. They live in the wake of the refinery, and they don't live in fear. They don't worry about their safety. So the real question then becomes, where do these TRAA people get their money? Where are they getting their money from? I think that's what has to be taken care of. Sorry if it's a little dark. Shading's a little different. I wonder if that'll help a little better. Okay. They are yuppies, not hippies. That makes a lot of sense. There's a dynamic that really stands out for me when seeing all of this. It kind of reminds me of the liberals who were in charge in Washington. You have these elitists who are totally out of touch with the needs of everyday people. They want to turn everything into a big fear-mongering incident. We pay the highest taxes in the state of California, and yet there's still concerns about safety. You heard all the workers saying how many degrees of safety and security have been imposed on the refinery workers time and again. And safety is the number one concern. Banning MHF would shut the refineries down. That's what would happen. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be a wise outcome. And for the minute and a half that I could speak, being able to identify the TRAA lady, Stacy Hayati, who for some reason has all these connections to Lion Ted Lieu, and then you've got Al Sattler, who is knee-deep with Al Martsucci. These are liberal, progressive, green freaks, climate alarmists who are basically committed to, pushing people into this Agenda 21 type of world. The big question is, what is it going to take so that these groups stop making all the noise they make? That's going to be the big issue. Where does the Torrance Refinery Action Alliance, where do they get their money from? That's a really good question. And what are they using their money for? I think that's what we have to start talking about. We can put an end to these people raging and raving about the refinery. So, sorry it's a little dark. The lighting isn't ideal right now. But at any rate, you got to see what large city action is about. And the number one issue in the city of Torrance right now is the refinery. The workers are speaking out. Residents are speaking out. People who live near the refinery are speaking out. And what I like especially is that individual people in the city, call out the TRAA. They don't speak for us. They are, a loud group that's a distraction. So with that, I'm going to close up. I will talk to you guys soon.